The presenters for this evening's expose are apparel designer Gaurav J. Gupta and architects A.R. Ramanathan and Snehanshu Mukherjee. We'll begin the expose with Gaurav's presentation, followed by that of Ramanathan and Snehanshu's. Mr. Ramanathan and Mukherjee, Mr. Mukherjee, please, we welcome you on stage.
Good evening, friends. Thank you, Lakshmi ji, for the kind introduction. And our special thanks to Allianz and Professor Prishti for inviting us to this forum to share our experience in design. It is true that we are now more than 27 years old as an organization, but the coming into being of team was a pure accident. It was a muggy afternoon in August 1984 when I was with no work or occupation, and as was the practice, entered SPA canteen to while away time. And then I was greeted by another founding partner of team, Anurag Gupta, who generously offered me a glass of Nimbu chai. Before we could finish the chai, he suggested that let's do the crossword. Anurag, who was 2 years junior to me, was otherwise a good friend in college, and it was normal for us to attack the daily crossword that appeared in the Times of India. Before I proceed, I would like to just mention that to stick to the strict discipline of time, we will be reading from a prepared text and the narrative. So we climbed the 2 floors to the library, 2 steps at a time, and quickly located a copy of the TOI. Anurag folded the paper, as he would normally do, to reveal just the crossword and a little more, and read out the first clue that he could put his eyes on. And he said, "Cash around 1,000 for the beast." Before the clue could sink in, he muttered animal and wrote it on the side and not in the squares. He knew instinctively it was wrong. The answer, of course, was monkey, money going around K. And when I told him so, he filled it in sheepishly, but with his customary flourish. Almost in the same motion, he said, "Hey, we should be doing this." When asked what, assuming it was the next clue, he said, "No, look at this," and opened the folded newspaper to reveal a 3" by 4" advertisement from the CPWD, which called for registration of architects to participate in an architectural design competition for the extension to the National Gallery of Modern Art. We read through the ad, and it asked for a COA registration and a membership of the IAA as well. "Do you have both?" was his next question. I said yes. His answer was a decisive, "Great, we are doing it." And within 24 hours, Snehanshu, who was gainfully employed, perhaps the only one amongst us, with Group India, was duly convinced and roped in to be a part of the team. Anurag, of course, had great convincing abilities. So began our efforts to produce a design for the competition. The competition schedule kept getting altered, including a change in the composition of the jury, and eventually moved well into 1985. Believe it or not, it was on this fateful day, yes, the 31st of May, but in 1985, when we submitted the entry at the NGMA Jaipur house. I borrowed my father's old Fiat car and borrowed the driver from one of our professors, Professor Narayan Swami, whom many of you might know, to transport the model and the roll of sheets from SPA to Jaipur house at India Gate. Well, the rest, as the saying goes, is history. However, very few people know that in its first 15 years of existence, team was pretty close to becoming history several times. It stuttered along with a nearly hand-to-mouth existence and with just a few projects to work on. The office, in fact, was more known for the parties it hosted than the projects it handled. So much so that in one of the New Year parties, the office ended up greeting complete strangers, all of whom had heard from someone or the other about this nice place where the party was a hit, and who had conveniently gate crashed. Well, the official announcements of the results came out in the press on the 13th of October, though we had heard rumors to the effect a few days earlier, but we are unsure if it was really true. But having won the competition, all of a sudden, we had to think about establishing an office, a possibility that had not crossed our minds at any time. Well, the first thing, we had to call ourselves something. So we debated many names and titles, from the state to the avant-garde before settling for TEAM, TEAM, acronym for Team for Engineering, Architecture and Management. The name, we partners realized, encapsulated what we as a team believed to be the way to practice architecture. That is, to find an optimal balance between architecture, engineering and project management. Optimal and not necessarily equal. The proportions and importance being determined by the specifics of each project and its context. I would very briefly go back to our penchant for solving cryptic crosswords. It requires a certain analytical approach to solve the cryptic clues. Analysis and the rational approach to problem solving were integral to how the founding partners tackled design as well. In fact, the jury made a special mention of the well-analyzed report. It will not be possible for us to see the entire body of works, so we will be using select images from select works to take the story through. And I will now request Snehanshu to take over, and I will come back a little later.
Well, we won the competition, much to our surprise, and then decided to form an office in December 1985 to build the project as well. At this point, Anurag asked Madhu to join in and form a quartet. Today, team is left with two of its founding partners standing here in front of you. Madhu got married to Neeraj Manchanda, and after her family grew, she joined hands with him professionally as well. Anurag went back to graphic designing and publishing, and has since moved on to become a microfinance king operating out of Mumbai. NGMA, as a design, even at the competition stage, reflected our understanding of architecture as an efficient, logical solution that resolves a complex building program on a difficult site in the most logical and buildable manner. However, the design was not merely limited to a rational solution. It had some distinctive and unusual design moves that were an outcome of the manner we had interpreted the context of the site within New Delhi's Central Vista complex and Jaipur House itself. We signed our contract with the Government of India to build NGMA on the 10th of December 1986, more than 15 months after the results were announced. At the outset, we had understood that the CPWD would control the entire building process on their terms. Therefore, it made sense to have them as our consultants for structures, electrical, mechanical, HVAC, fire detection and protection. We started design development work with great enthusiasm, only to realize in a very short time that it was not going to be a straight and narrow path. Work actually proceeded as if we were on an obstacle course. The sanctioning process took years as we countered one roadblock after the other. DUAC alone took 3 years to clear. Then it seemed as an almost insurmountable stalemate. We were also probably the most hated architects by the DUAC those days. Then there were illegal occupants on site who went to court twice and obtained stays. All of this took several years to resolve, to be precise, 13 years. And then the client decided to seek a fresh administrative approval, and we were pushed back by another 5 years before construction could begin at site. In the meantime, we worked on the design, progressing beyond the competition stage. The design was becoming more people-friendly, more open to explore and wander around. The appearance of the building too was being constantly refined in an attempt to break down its bulk to a human scale, to merge with the site and its trees. However, with the project not leading anywhere, we were also not getting paid. The prize money had been spent a long time ago. Some of the money was spent on a world tour to study museums. This was an investment that actually stood us in good stead while developing a detailed building program and deciding upon the special services and infrastructure that a museum of this scale and nature required. Things were pretty bad financially. We also did not have any contacts that would get us work, nor did we wish to undercut fees or pander to clients' whims to get new projects. Ramanathan and I were teaching as visiting faculty at SPA. I was probably learning more than my students, since teaching taught me to learn when I studied design as a student. Luckily for us, some work started trickling in from other sources. Ronesh Ray, a senior from SPA and an old friend, invited us to join him in designing the Indira Gandhi Memorial Museum, and later to work on the Japan Man and Life, a photo exhibition that was to tour the 4 metros. The extension to the Indian Society for Technical Education headquarters at IIT Delhi was referred to us by Ramanathan's friend, Professor Krishnamurthy of IIT Delhi. This was the first real architectural project that got constructed. However, the design in its entirety never got built, and we had to be satisfied with remodeling the facade and adding a floor to the existing building. At around the same time, in 1990, Mr. Stein, whom I had trained under, asked us to design a house for his friend, the barrister Mr. Vijay Shankar Das, in Gurgaon. This was probably the first building we built in team, from the foundation up to the final finishes. It was in 1993 that the project, which was to become our mainstay while NGMA hibernated, happened to us. In those days, I was teaching at the New School of Architecture, which doesn't exist anymore, TVB School of Habitat Studies. Ramu Katakam, who also taught there, had at that time decided to give up architecture and run an art gallery instead. He asked me if we would be interested in designing the Osho commune in Delhi. He then introduced us to Swami Atul Anand and Swami Om Prakash Saraswati, whom we referred to as Swamiji. Ramu's introduction resulted in one of the most creative and productive periods of work in the history of team so far. Osho Dham as a project continues till today and showcases the other end of the spectrum of our architectural works. By now, our approach to design had matured. Each of our designs started with a search to first define and then create a context which would guide the design to its logical conclusion. The context would be shaped by the existing site context and resources, along with the intended building program, or the client's brief, and in some cases, the promoter's philosophy. In the case of Osho Dham, the brief was to create a place for meditation, supported by residential infrastructure for long and short-term stays for the disciples. The place was to be designed such that it would have few or little references to what the Swamis experienced in their day-to-day living in the real world. Above all, it should be set within a wondrous garden. The existing site of 20 acres was originally agricultural fields cultivated by the farmers of nearby villages. There were very few trees on site. A ring of young Alstonia scholaresses had been newly planted in a ring around the spot which Swamiji had chosen to be the place for the meditation hall. Our first idea was to create a dense forest over a small part of the site which would surround the meditation hall, recreating the idea of a tapovan within which the disciples were to meditate, symbolically away from the man-made world. The path to the hall would be a spiral, symbolizing the inward journey to the sublime. The spiral path also had a practical aspect that it created the illusion of a much longer walk through a large forest without seeing the destination till one came up close. The meditation hall was designed as a large floating roof on a square plan of 80 feet sides. The floor was initially in polished black Kadapa stone with a Jaisalmer yellow spiral ending at its center. The roof was a domical shell resting on 4 columns of 8 feet height. The center of the hall rose to 34 feet. The hall was proportioned such that it sat without intimidating the users. The sides were unenclosed, so that when seen from within the forest, one saw right through the hall as if it were invisible. The structure in built-up steel sections was designed by erstwhile structures teacher, Professor T.S. Narayan Swami, who so generously loaned us his driver to deliver the NGMA competition model, and analyzed by Professor B.A. Mahuja of IIT Delhi. The design strategy helped to create an illusion of a large forest without actually occupying a lot of land, as the rest of the site was largely conserved for growing food for the commune. This illustrates our design method of arriving at an appropriate context, which is then evolved further to function at many levels. First and foremost, of practical usefulness, but equally the creation of a sense of place that is more sensory and which gives aesthetic pleasure. The subsequent buildings came up over the years, as you can see by the numbering sequence on the site of it. The first few were the Kabir dorms and the dining hall and kitchen with its staff quarters. These buildings were placed at the foot of the meditation hall and aligned to the axis of the shortcut that leads to the hall directly for regular use. Since the buildings were so close to the hall, we sunk the dorms into the ground, improving their thermal insulation while retaining a sense of openness around the hall. The dining hall was conceived as a pavilion, a typology used extensively in traditional architecture, which could be modified according to the climate by the use of temporary side canals. The kitchen necessarily needed to be enclosed. but we integrated it into the landscape by treating its roof as an extension of the public realm in a manner which allowed people to climb over its top and come down towards the hall. Here too, sunken into the ground with its own court, were the staff quarters, located practically close by but out of sight from the movement path of the disciples. The innovation in the structural systems devised by our old friend Dr. Prabir Das, who had then moved from Calcutta to Delhi, was an exploration we especially enjoyed. The system utilized locally available materials and skills. The materials were sandstone slabs, steel sections, and wire rope. The structural steel fabricator was Amrit Singh, a bus body fabricator from Najafgarh next door, along with the local civil contractor Brahmanand. We did load tests to ensure that these strategies would work after all. However, we did get the occasional heart attack when the fabricator called up early one morning, causing Prabir and me to rush to site to discover that they had not followed our instructions fully, causing the trusses to sag. Here you see the full team standing after completing the dining hall. After a few years, the planted forest took on its role seriously as it had managed to grow up. At this time, we were joined by Adit, our very first model maker and paying trainee. Adit had returned with a degree in landscape architecture from University of Pennsylvania and no less in the US of A and become our landscape designer. He shaped the land to complement the various structures that had started to be built. The landscape was designed towards creating a microclimate of its own, complete with water recharging. We did not even allow the wastewater to escape the site. Osho Dham was attracting more visitors, so Atul Swami decided to enlarge the capacity of the hall. This was a difficult design proposition as the hall by itself was a finite shape. Adding an extension to it was tough. We therefore added a completely different roof, a low flat brim on three sides to include more people. Underground air cooling ducts were buried in to provide cool air and airflow for the hot months. The new roofs were meant to be also floating to preserve the see-through transparency of the hall. The structure this time was designed by Mr. Subir Rai Chaudhary, who was the head of structures at Mr. Stein's office during my 2-year training period. He devised an RCC roof that was supported on 2 columns on the inside and a ring of slender, almost invisible steel tube columns on the periphery. The black floor and the yellow spiral were replaced by a white Kishangarh marble floor, which we went all the way till Makarana to select. The spiral was now more subtle. It was integrated into the pattern that the stone slabs were laid in. This had another practical advantage of reducing wastage, since several sizes had to be used to achieve this pattern. Now it seems, even to us, as if the hall was always designed in this manner. Along with the hall extension, we built the remaining crescent of the Kabir domes by adding the Nanak rooms on the other side of the central reception. Before this, we had added another small structure, Swamiji's meeting room, a ferro-cement roof structure designed by Prabir, which had a ventilated inner roof and was perfectly aligned climatically, which allowed it to remain cool even during the hottest period of the year. Osho World Galleria at Ansas Plaza was the first major Osho-related interior design project. This time the brief was to create a space for meditation within a loud commercial mall. Atul Swami had expressed the design brief with the phrase, meditating in the marketplace. The resulting interior was crafted out of materials such as stone, timber, steel and glass in a zen-like composition, which transports the visitor away from the typical noise and glitz of a shopping mall. Atul Swami was also the owner of Triage Overseas, a highly reputed home furnishing export house supplying exclusively to Europe. After a few years of our association with Osho Dham, he requested us to design his warehousing and production facilities in Begumpur, Malviya Nagar, and later his corporate office at Gulmohar Park. This time, the design brief was to make a building grounded in Delhi, its climate, and the immediate context of an urban village. The Begumpur building, therefore, had a blank facade on its lower floors with verandas that ran around 2 sides on the upper floors. The top floor was also included an apartment for the manager with an independent entry at one end. Our visual reference was this building from Old Delhi, the one on the left. In case of the corporate office at Gulmohar Park, we utilized the veranda to become strip gardens and a space to create a microclimate strip which ran the external facades at each level. However, since this building was within a plot, we were able to develop a small front garden as well. This was a project where the architecture and its interior was designed by us together from the initial stages of design. The evolution of these designs could happen because of the personal rapport and trust that we enjoyed with Swami Athuranandan Swamiji. The client here was personally involved in an extremely supportive way with each design and design process. This was also possible because we probably matched in our thought processes. However, if this is an ideal situation, it often does not materialize in life, which can lead to disastrous situations. As many of us has found out designing houses, this is one field of architecture which requires special talent at getting to know the client. We were not always successful with designing houses, but a few that we did changed the relationship between us and the clients, who become close friends. Two such houses we present here, both were built at the same time. The first is a non-typical farmhouse for Rajan and Kalpana Parik's family on a rocky, naturally undulating part of the ridge near Mandi village. The other is for Arindam Ganguly and Seema Bakshi on another part of the ridge, Greenfields near Surajkund. The difference in design or the sense of place reflects the cultural differences between two families. However, the designs were arrived at by the same process that we had stated earlier in this presentation. The same design process landed us the design of the Oxford bookstore chain. In 1993, the architectural photographer Ram Rehman had met Preeti Paul, and she had asked him to suggest an architect who is a Bengali but does not live in Bengal to redesign the 75-year-old Oxford bookstore on Park Street, Calcutta. Ram suggested our office and she commissioned us to design the shop. The design intent was to recreate the old world charm of Calcutta without resorting to a faking as a period film or a period set. The bookshop was to also have a new space for art exhibitions, film shows and lectures. To accommodate these functions, we had to add a new mezzanine by sinking the floor down in one section of the shop length. The structure for the mezzanine was an exposed steel, painted a typical blue-green shade with teak veneer paneling and the classic Calcutta red IPS floor. Oxford has remained, like Oshadham, a perennial project, having designed almost all the stores across India and even in Dubai. The bookstore went beyond Calcutta into other cities with a chaba added to the brief. The designs have become more fluid. However, there still remains a continuity in the sense of place that was first created in Calcutta. Here too, the personal rapport with Preeti has worked for us to continue to design one store after the other, each different from the other, always creating and innovating anew by incorporating what we learned from the previous design. 3 buildings around India Gate. This also happens to be a working title for a book on the works of team. The institutional buildings, in comparison, are less personal and often without an individual who would direct the progress of the project. So again, in the late 1990s, we edged back towards the sleeping NGMA by designing the stancery of the Embassy of Spain on Prithviraj Road. Our first house client, Mr. Vijay Shankar Das, who is a friend of the ambassador, had recommended our name, and we were asked to create a design on a site large enough to build a chancery, but with strict LBZ controls that allowed us eventually to build exactly the same volume as the derelict existing building that stood next to the ambassador's bungalow. The LBZ rules took some 3 years to be decided before we could get the plan sanctioned. Our main concern here was the reverse of NGMA. How to create a building 2-story tall, that too with a low height restriction, to appear gracious enough as the chancery to an embassy. We attempted to do so by carefully working on proportions of the facades and the choice of materials and finishes to create an appropriate sense of space. The close proximity of the original Lutyens period bungalow too had to be kept in mind so that the buildings would sit comfortably side by side. By the time we constructed the embassy, another slow-moving project near India Gate, the Management Studies building for Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, chose to wake up. This was a project which was referred to us by Mr. J.M. Benjamin, the former chief architect of the CPWD. However, while BBB had dragged its feet about building it, it also involved us getting completion certificates for the existing buildings as well. We were privileged to build next to the existing school building designed by our teacher, Professor H.T. Chaya. The existing exposed brick building dictated the predominant texture of the facades. However, since this building was not to be a senior secondary school, we had to create a distinct identity as a place of higher learning. The serviceability and climatic comfort levels in the common spaces made us borrow the courtyard from Professor Chaya's building, but we roofed it over to make a more useful atrium. The floor slabs projecting out at each level to provide a continuous ledge for placing equipment as well as regular maintenance work. The elevations were designed to incorporate these practical details to create a separate identity from the older building and yet sit beside it like an old friend. which in this case was Professor Chaya. NGMA again. Finally, the construction of the new wing, NGMA, began in May 2003. It got inaugurated and thrown open to public in January 2009. Before the commencement of construction, team had yet another relook at the detailing achieved and was able to take advantage of more advanced technological options available then. Electronic security, for example, had moved to a new plane altogether. So was lighting. However, the CPWD strangely took some unilateral decisions and left out our recommendations and left their implementation incomplete. The client is still struggling to set right the mistakes. The project had smoothly absorbed all these changes and refinements while solidly retaining its character. What makes us proud is not only the unequivocal approval of the new wing by many well-known international museum professionals and curators as comparable with the very best in the world, but getting it completed within the approved estimates. I think now I request Ramanathan to read out the very last section. Not much left.
The building of NGMA new wing in many ways prepared us to move to the next level of design. We would like to illustrate this through 3 brief examples. We had come to realize that our method of designing had yielded a variety of different buildings, all stemming from the same set of concerns that developed the designs in each project. The search for a context, a sense of place that would guide the design idea, continuous design audits that would hone the designs to be lean, efficient and cost effective. Team is not consciously bound by a style or technology in search of a good design. So we were able to achieve a higher level of design thinking when we designed a resort for the Park Hotel at the Andamans. The stringent CRZ rules, that is the coastal zone regulation rules, made us rethink our design position even more critically, which pushed us to think deeper and come up with the ability to innovate meaningfully. The designs of the entire complex and the cottages were guided by principles of conservation of resources, energy, interpreting traditional knowledge bases, and inventing new ways to meet the requirements of a demanding, high-end resort in a truly creative manner. The cottages were designed with Probir as our consultant and was a natural outcome of the severe geographical conditions of these tropical islands. They are prone to cyclone as well as earthquake, as well as dictated by what would be a valid construction process in a sensitive ecological zone. The project is yet to be built. However, we got a chance to test out some of these design approaches in the case of New Delhi YMCA's campsite at Sattal in the Uttarakhand Hills. The program of the campsite established the need for biodegradable canvas tents to be used for all the spatial requirements. The way they were organized and detailed on the site, along with the landscaping, passive wastewater treatment systems, and energy conservation measures were far more rigorous than what had been achieved even at Oshoda. Of course, the site is a stunning location in just facing the Sattal, and the clients are tempted to convert the camping arrangement into almost a resort. So we are struggling to match their requirements now by allowing some changes. In one of team's current projects, the APJ school at Bhubaneswar, we are attempting to put in place a decentralized design process. In this project, the basic cold shell would be put together by a conventional process. However, the infill walls and the finishes would be both thought out, detailed and constructed by local craftspersons. Many of them we hope would be traditional master craftsperson as well. This process of design we believe will minimize the top-down control of the architect and allow space for many more designers, craftsperson at different hierarchical levels to own and contribute to the making of the school. The mechanism to make this happen we are yet to formalize, but its framework is based upon Professor John Habraken's seminal work on thematic design and transformations. As you heard a little while ago, team is working towards a publication covering its 27 years of professional journey. I must admit that this evening's presentation actually gave us an opportunity to look back at our works over the years and critically assess them. We were happy to realize that the process adopted by team has remained reasonably consistent irrespective of the project or the context in which it is set, or even the eventual product. Perhaps this consistency and an approach that comprehends architectural design, engineering systems, and project management together holistically, combined with the experience gained over the years, has allowed team to take on works in this current phase, which include top-end coordination and monitoring of projects for real estate investment funds, important Government of India buildings, master plan for large townships, design and management of large international traveling exhibitions, mostly for the Ministry of Culture. Team has, however, retained its small size, and this is by choice, limited to the 2 partners and a set of associates whose numbers vary between 3 and 6 at the most at any given time. Snehanshu and I are also part of a fledgling publishing house that aims to bring out publications on subjects that we believe will add to a knowledge base. And these are also subjects which, more often than not, do not get easily accepted by larger commercially successful publishing houses. We have so far published 2 titles and are in the process of bringing out 2 more. To conclude, in a few years, perhaps sooner than later, both Snehanshu and I will lessen our professional pursuits. We certainly hope the team and its design credo remain alive. Maybe Siddhartha and Anamika, who have been with us over the last 7 years and who have understood team's approach, will carry it forward, infusing it with their own personal signatures. Work in team has always been teamwork, and therefore what has been achieved over the years is thanks to the contribution of all our associates, employees, and steadfast consultants who have often had to put up with our idiosyncrasies and style of functioning. So this is a list through which we acknowledge the contributions. I would also like to apologize if in this list of acknowledgements someone has been left out. If it has so happened, it should be attributed to just a slip and a loss of memory, and is certainly not deliberate. Thank you.